to discuss professional African women who are going to be speaking out to us today on domestic abuse and violence. So it goes without saying, but I'm not going to assume anything. And so what are we talking about when we talk about domestic violence? So essentially we're talking about the abuse of one partner within an intimate or family relationship. It is the repeated, random and habitual use of intimidation to control a partner. The abuse can be physical, emotional, psychological, financial or sexual. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a privilege and it's such an honor to stand before you and to share my story. And I'm going to have a little bit of support in doing this today from Gail. So please can we all clap for Gail? Any of you who's experienced domestic abuse will know, or those who know people who've experienced domestic abuse, is the big silence. People don't talk about it. And so one of the things I felt led to do recently is to be able to come out and talk about it. And to be able to show that, as a professional, as Zena said, you know, it cuts across race, creed, religion, etc., etc. But unless people start talking about domestic violence, unless survivors start talking about domestic violence, then we're going to stay stuck. And I would like to say that although there are women of all creeds and colours in this room, that especially in ethnic minorities, it has a particular stigma, it has a particular taboo, and we just don't talk about it. And I believe personally, coming from a Nigerian background, that actually our culture seems to promote domestic abuse. So, with that in mind, I'm going to talk also because I'm a committed Christian, so I apologize to those who probably or possibly don't share my faith, but I believe that a belief in any shape or form is instrumental in survival. As a medical doctor, I would tell you that research shows, for example, that when somebody has a heart attack, the likelihood of them surviving after the immediate medical intervention, there is research to show that people who have a faith, you know, whether Christian, Muslim or something, are more likely to survive. So today, in sharing my story, I am also going to talk from a biblical perspective, because that's what I believe in. If you don't believe in that, that's fine. But also remember that faith, from whatever kind of religious views you have, are quite important in your survival. So the Bible talks about in Proverbs 4:7 that, you know, wisdom is the principal thing, and therefore get wisdom. I mean, all you're getting, get understanding. So whether it's about domestic violence or anything else, it's really important that people get an understanding. So before I start telling you about my story, and I say a case presentation, I'm going to make sure that we're all talking from the same hymn sheet in terms of what is domestic violence. So I went looking on the Department of Health's website, and this is the official definition for domestic violence and abuse in this country as of today, July 2016. It's any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling. Can I hear people say controlling?
Controlling.
Coercive.
Coercive.
Threatening behavior.
Threatening behavior.
Violence or abuse.
Violence or abuse.
Now, you might not be a victim of or a survivor of domestic violence, but we're all our brothers and sisters keepers. And if you don't understand what abuse is, you're not going to be in a position to support or help anybody else, as Zena said, hence the educational bit. And it happens, for the definition given by Department of Health, it's for those aged 16 or over who are or have been intimate partners, family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. Next slide, please, Gail. So let's look at controlling behavior, because a lot of times when people think about domestic abuse, they're thinking about physical violence. And having been one who was kicked and beaten around, I'm not minimizing that, but domestic abuse is not just the physical aspect. So you've got the controlling behavior. A lot of partners or people who are abusive, they're very controlling in their attitude. And that's the definition, a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate or dependent by isolating them. So for example, even though I'm fairly well qualified, as most people would say, my husband, who ironically is Zena's ex-husband's cousin, so we're cousins by marriage, and I always tell people that out of my marriage came, let's say, 4 good things. My children, my cousin, I love her to bits, and her children, and a few in-laws who actually didn't support the abuse. So
It's an act of making you feel subordinate or dependent. So my ex-husband refused to let me work. Emphasis on the refused. And so I was completely dependent on him financially. And then at that point in time, I was living in Nigeria. So yes, as my sister said, I was in big trouble. So even though I had lived in this big house, and when he would wheel me out, I had this nice car, and I would go dressed out, I was dying inside because I was being controlled. And I was deprived, as it says, of a need for independence. And my whole everyday lifestyle was regulated. So for example, at that point in time, I used to enjoy driving just to get out of the house. But my ex-husband would always send the driver, because at least the driver would tell Oga, as they say now, where I was going.
Oh my.
Coercive behavior. So again, an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation, or other abuse that is used to harm, punish, or frighten the victim. So for example, I've been kicked for the car breaking down. I didn't have money, did I? So I couldn't get the car repaired, and I had to park the car and walk home because I didn't have money. And then when my ex-husband eventually got home, he beat me for leaving the car. So there are different types of domestic violence. We all talk about the psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional, and other. I'm going to go to the other because although I guess today many people in here are kind of emphasizing on those, in the United Kingdom of 2016 there are other forms of domestic abuse and violence that we need to understand and know about. So, other forms of domestic violence: forced marriage, dowry abuse, FGM, honor-based violence. And then, of course, you've got all the issues around sexual violence, rape, sexual assault, stalking and harassment. And I hope you know that you can be raped within marriage. It's about consent. The law is very, I mean, for me as a forensic psychiatrist, I'm often assessing people who have mental health difficulties or not, as the case may be, in prison. And I hear a lot of men saying, well, you know, it couldn't have been rape. And I try and explain to them that, look, the law as it stands in this country is the person has to give you valid consent. You can't assume. And the same goes in marriage. You know, your body is your own. You have a right to say no. So, my cousin was talking about recognizing abuse, and I'm going to just do a few pointers, because today is about learning as well. Next one. I'm going to start with self. So how do you know if you're being abused? You're constantly afraid. You're quite avoidant, so you avoid other people. You have cognitive distortion, so it's all my fault. I should cook more, be a better sex machine in the bedroom, a better cook in the kitchen. You might feel completely disconnected from your emotions and feel numb, and there's a sense of helplessness. So at a point, I just began to get really depressed because I didn't feel there was any way out. So what does the partner do? Attitudes of the partner to look at if you're not quite sure whether your partner is abusive or whether somebody you know is in an abusive relationship. The partner who is inflicting the abuse engages in this kind of behaviors, very belittling, so humiliates the person, very, very critical, embarrasses the person that's been abused, sometimes in public, ignores or puts down your opinions and recommendations, very blaming and objectification. So I was, back in the day, a bit slimmer than I am now, and I guess from a Nigerian perspective, probably a trophy wife because I was a doctor. So I was wheeled out to, oh, she's so beautiful and she's so clever. But at home I was told that you're fat, stupid, ugly, etc. When it comes to actual behavior, so we've talked about the attitudes of the abusive partner. Now actual behavior, so very bad and unpredictable temper, verbal outbursts, verbal abuse, assaultative behavior or threats of assaultative behavior. Threats to take away your children or harm you. And that for women with children is a key one, because most women don't want to leave their children. So if you're in a relationship with a man who says, if you go, you can go, but I'll take the children from you, that's very destructive, and it has a way of making the woman submit to the abuse. Some men do the reverse thing, or partners, because we remember abuse can be on both sides, where they threaten to commit suicide if you leave. And of course, as we said, sex without valid consent, which is rape. And sometimes property destruction, so destroying your property, not giving you freedom. So, husband, you must have thought I was very sexy, but actually, not every man I came into contact with thought I was a sex bomb. But actually then it was not funny. Very possessive, very controlling, isolating you, and limiting your access to money, the phone, the car, and constantly checking up on your whereabouts. And I experienced all of the above. Next. So, as I said, this is about learning, and this is what a cycle of abuse is, because it's no point me coming here and telling you your story, or we telling our stories. You have to go away with some information. So this is how domestic abuse, there's a cycle. You know, somebody did some research, 1978, and this is what the cycle is. So what you start off from number one is there's tension increasing in the house or the relationship. There's a breakdown of communication, and the victim becomes fearful and feels that they need to placate the abuser, you know. That can, depending, you know, could be a day, it could be a week. And what you find in domestic abuse is that the cycle gets shorter and shorter. So the first time there's an incident of domestic abuse, you know, the next incident could be months or even years. As the abuse becomes more ingrained, the cycle gets shorter and shorter. It could occur over days or a day. The next thing that happens is there will be an incident, whether it's verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. And it will include anger, blaming, arguing, threats, intimidation, and violence. After that, for a lot of abusive relationships, there's then a period of reconciliation. So the partner says, oh, I'm oh so sorry, it won't happen again, but you're the cause of the problems, but I really love you, and all the rest of it. And there's like a kind of honeymoon period. And then you go to what's called the calm period. The incident is forgotten. Well, you haven't forgotten, or whoever's been abused, but, you know, superficially on the surface, it appears like everything's forgotten. There's probably no abuse taking place, and there's a honeymoon phase. And then what happens is you go back to number one. And as I said, the longer the abuse is going on, the shorter the circle. Next. Girl, you're doing great. So, my cousin talked about recognizing abuse in another. How do you might suspect that somebody you know, a friend, a sister, a brother, because men get abused too, is being abused. How might you be able to recognize that somebody else that you know is possibly getting abused? They might become very withdrawn. They might be eager to do everything that the partner says. They show compulsive behavior, drugs, sleeping around, addictions, not being able to do the things that they previously used to do, possibly impact on mental state, not able to focus or concentrate on things. You might see mood changes, and if you're very observant, physical injury. So the person that said, oh, I banged my face against the wall or something. So, recent facts and figures. Maybe the teacher in me, I like facts and figures. These are facts and figures from last year. 1.4 million women and 700,000 men experienced domestic abuse in the last year. Next. And these are just some facts and figures from some research that was done recently in England and Wales for people between the age of 16 to 59. Next one. Office of National Statistics. 28% of women and nearly 15% of men have experienced some form of domestic abuse since the age of 16. That's in United Kingdom as of now. Well, as a Christian, you want to feel that you're safe in church. So I went to do some research. And this came out in a particular magazine known as Premier Christianity. It's a small survey, at least for the academics, but I just want you to get a sense, a feel of what we're dealing with. So in this particular survey, they interviewed 443 people. There were 77 male and 77% female, 23% male. I know for the academics, they might say there's a bit of bias there because they interviewed more women than men, but then one might say that women are more likely to be abused than men, but we won't go. In terms of education, again, 80% educated to degree level or above. 97 of them were churchgoers and 67% of them were married. So, this is in a church, a faith community. 16 had experienced physical harm. 40% of the respondents had experienced intimidation. And 33.3% of them had experienced put-downs from their partner. Again, emphasizing on the fact that it's not just about somebody knocking you around. You know, in fact, I would say to you, not that I enjoy being knocked around, but the thing that I've had to struggle with, and I left my marriage 18 and a half years ago, the thing that took longer to heal was all the emotional stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, yes, of course somebody can beat you up and kill you, but if you survive that and you come out, the healing process, it takes a long time, a long, long time. So, just over 50% of the people who had been surveyed had suffered domestic violence and had sought information or help. This is why I said it's important as people that we recognize abuse, because most people would first go to a trusted friend before they go anywhere else. And the second thing is that they would go to church. And I really want to emphasize this now, using all of my hats as a mental health, a senior mental health professional, as a counselor. When somebody comes to talk to you, if you're not a skilled domestic abuse person, you are not supposed to be giving advice. And you're also not supposed to be telling people what to do. I always tell people in my role as a therapist that, you know, when somebody comes to talk to you, you're enabling them to come to their own decisions. You see, at the end of the day, if somebody has to leave their husband and whatever else, it has major ramifications. My marriage broke down officially 18 and a half years ago. I would say it's in the last maybe 3 years that the dust has finally settled. Now, if I didn't have my own personal conviction that I needed to leave for my sanity and for that of my children, I would probably be either gone back, well, I did that a couple of times historically before I left finally, or I wouldn't be able to cope, but at least it was my decision to leave. So you have to be a listening ear, and of course if somebody says, what do you think? You probably have to say things about, have you considered, not you must leave or you must stay, as the case may be. But you don't tell people what to do. Now, in terms of faith communities, sad, isn't it? Only 42% of people surveyed felt that their church was a safe place. And I have to say that I'm hoping one of the things I desire to do, and Uncle Sam's right there, is to begin to change the culture in faith communities. Because, yes, as a Christian, I know that God hates divorce. But I'd like to say to every faith that God hates abuse more than he hates divorce.
Yes.
And I also think that, you know what, that we need to start looking at why do people end up in abusive relationships. You know, if I'm going to quote scripture that talks about foundations being very important. The reason why many people end up in abusive relationships is because the foundations are not solid. So if you've come from an abusive background and you're wanting to be loved, you probably get into the first relationship where somebody shows you all this love, inverted commas, and you interpret control and coercion with love, which is what I did. Or maybe your esteem is low, and then before you know it, you're in this very abusive relationship, and it's really difficult to get out, and it is difficult to get out. If you happen to be in a situation where you know you're being abused, I'm not going to be blasé and say pack your bags and go. I know how difficult it was. I was officially married for 10 years, and it was really difficult to come out. Really, really, really difficult. And I can't underestimate that. Let's just go forward. Girl, you're doing great. So I decided to take it back home. Yeah, I'm British and I've got my red passports. But my parents will always remind me that, you know what, we're Nigerian. So I decided, but all jokes aside, I wanted to find out about whether the figures and stats that we find in the United Kingdom, whether they came a little bit closer to my cultural background. Of course it was difficult, but essentially, this is what I found out, that more than 2,000 Nigerian women are believed to experience physical, sexual and psychological abuse at the hands of their husbands. Remembering that in the Nigerian culture, marriage is the dumb thing, so it's not so much living together, etc. So most people end up getting married. Next. So, I was able to find a little survey. Again, I apologize to the academics amongst you because of course it is a very small survey, but I think it was representative. It was conducted in 2 states in Nigeria, known as Lagos and Oyo. And it found that nearly 65% of educated women and 56% of lower income women had experienced domestic abuse. And I was sitting there thinking, so the educated ones get kicked about more than the lower income ones? Not funny. You know what happens? I mean, I actually have found a voice since I came out. But for a lot of people who are not timid, I think what happens is the educated ones, when the man says whatever he says, and the woman says, you're being ridiculous, or, the educated women are most likely not going to take it lying down, and so the man can't handle it and he beats them. Whereas I would suggest to you that the market women, their culture, they've been brought up to be submissive, however you define it, and you have to cook and clean and etc. So I think that that's why the survey showed that it's even more in those women who are educated. So this is what Amnesty International says about Nigeria.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that in America, educated women suffer more from domestic violence.
Well, there you go.
Yes, so America's the same situation.
Yeah. So what does it say? Amnesty International said Nigeria's rate of domestic violence is shocking. Shocking. And this is what Amnesty International said about Nigeria. On a daily basis, Nigerian women are beaten, raped, and even murdered by members of their family for supposed transgressions, which can range from not having meals ready on time to visiting family members without their husband's permission. Tragically, husbands, partners, and fathers are responsible for most of the violence against these women. So that's in the Nigerian African context. And sadly, at least in Nigeria, and I'm assuming that that is the case for many of the countries in the sub-Sahara, domestic violence in Nigeria is neither against the law, nor do the victims receive full legal support. So, I just need to clarify something. I'm not a lawyer, and I know that Esther and other people will probably be more qualified, but of course in my role, in terms of treating people who are mentally ill who come into contact with the criminal justice system, I am aware of this act. This is the act which governs how domestic violence should be managed. It's the Domestic Violence Crime and Victims Act 2004. And as it says, it's concerned with criminal justice and concentrates upon legal protection and assistance to victims of crime, particularly domestic violence. And it was updated, I think, in 2008. So there is a legal structure. Unlike when I began on my journey, there is now a legal structure to protect victims of domestic violence. And it's really important that everybody knows that. And the reason why I say that is that back in the day when I would call the police to come and help me out, it really depends on potluck. If it was a sympathetic policeman, he'd be really nice to me, and if not, he'd just look and think, oh God, these black people are doing police, but they are duty bound to act. So, just for the people who have faith amongst us, what does the Bible say? It talks about submitting one to another, not just the wife submitting to the husband. Next one. It says the husband should love their wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It says that husbands, I'm just talking in terms of, the Christian perspective of marriage, the husbands ought to love their wives, and he who loves his wife loves himself. So I'm hoping that with time, that message gets really flagged up in churches. And again, another scripture, however, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself. Yeah, but wives must respect their husbands. That's the Christian view. And again, submit yourself to your own husbands as you do unto the Lord. So, I'm not going to come here. But I wanted to flag that out for those who are Christians who might be struggling with this issue about leaving. The definition of submission is a willingness to follow leadership which is of God. I would like to submit to you who are Christians, who are either still in abusive relationships or know people, that abuse is not of God. And you are not expected to submit yourself to abuse, because that is not of God. That is not the spirit of submission. So, finally, we now hopefully have a global, or we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. We all understand what domestic abuse is. We understand, how prevalent it is. We understand that, predominantly, probably for most of us sitting in here, we associate it with financial, emotional, physical abuse, etc. But there are other forms such as FGM and dowry abuse and forced marriages, etc. And now I'm going to be the case study. So this is the bit that's probably a bit difficult to me. I don't promise not to cry. The last time I shared it, right at the end I did. But I think that if people are not vulnerable, I'd like to think that the reason why I put all the qualification at the beginning of the slide is not because I think I'm too much, but I also want to encourage people, if you're still in that process or you know somebody, that you can come through out at the other end and still make something of your life. Today, you'll see a picture of my daughter at the end, but today my eldest child is almost 25 and is a project manager, and my younger child is 21. When I left, one was 7 and one was 4. So it's been a very long journey. So, A little bit about me, and I'm going to do it really quickly now. I've got maybe 2 minutes. Have I got 2 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was born in the UK, and I was fostered, and I returned to Nigeria in my late childhood. And the reality is, I guess, because we talk about foundational stuff, was I felt I never really belonged. When I was growing up in Essex with foster parents, I was the only black kid in the village. And when I went back to Nigeria, I was the child who came from England, had a really English accent, didn't really understand the culture, the lingo, and I just didn't feel I belonged. If you add on to that, although I came from a family that is quite privileged in terms of royalty used to come to my house as a teenager, but we were a very dysfunctional family. My parents didn't get on. There was domestic violence, and it was, witnessed domestic violence regularly, various forms. So for me, I developed a really self-low esteem. I was somebody who was constantly seeking validation externally because I didn't really like myself, didn't even know who I was. And subsequently, even when I got into university, it felt like as if I found it really difficult to find myself. And when I became a Christian, for the Christians amongst you, that didn't really resolve it. Because people weren't talking about emotions then. It was all about, give your life to Jesus. And nothing practical. And so one of my desires is about practical Christianity. But what I remember as a young Christian was the fact that they used to bang on in church about being not unequally yoked. And the thinking behind that was that you had to find a Christian man to marry. So I did. I met my ex-husband in church. I'd done a few boyfriends that were, not acceptable to the church I went to. And I ended up marrying the best friend of a very well-known pastor in Nigeria. If I said the name of the pastor, all the Nigerians here would know. And that pastor actually still remains my elder daughter's godfather. Now, on the face of it, my ex-husband ticked all the boxes. He came from a really well-heeled Igbo family, highly educated, very successful, and initially quite charming and attentive. But if I really understood, the control and the coercion was already there. But I was so naive, I didn't recognize it. So he had a high profile in church because the pastor was his best friend, and he could mouth scriptures, but there was no change in mind. And some things we said, my ex-husband is not submitted to anyone and is still not submitted to anyone, very critical and controlling. And initially it was subtle put down, but later they became really full blown. So looking at where he was coming from, yes, he came from a very well-heeled family, but there are very complex family dynamics. I mean, just because I'm divorced, I've got children, so of course I'm still involved in the family. And Zena knows, very difficult dynamics. I think there's a history of domestic violence, although certain people would deny it, because my ex-mother-in-law said to me when I'd left, all men beat their wives, and why have I left? And importantly, my ex-husband had a close friend who seemed to support domestic violence. He also had this tendency of putting other people down. So for me, third day of marriage, I'm assaulted. And it just got worse from there. Wasn't allowed to work. He controlled all the money, actively isolated me from friends and family. And there were constant verbal abuses and put downs. I wasn't clever, I wasn't sharp. And he didn't also support my career. My career stagnated. So the fact that I'm all these different things, all these cats, is just a miracle. Because for about 10 years, I didn't practice medicine. The abuse went very quickly from emotional to physical and all in between. And the abuse pattern that I explained to you, it just became shorter and shorter and shorter. I felt helpless, I felt worthless, I felt depressed, and I was suicidal. And in fact, I did try to commit suicide on one occasion, and I'm only alive by the grace of God. It went on for many years, and this is where it's important that people look out and support people. I had two friends. I had one friend that when the beatings got too much, by now I've got to England, I would run to her house and stay there. And I had another friend who didn't really know what was going on, but she was observant, she was a social worker, and I think she knew there was abuse. And she took me to a place called Mulberry House, and got me some counselling. And it was for the first time that the counsellor didn't tell me what to do, but invited me to consider that even as a Christian, domestic abuse was not good for me, and if I didn't want to think about it for me, what about the impact on my young children? Essentially for me, I went to church one day, I'm fast forwarding, and I heard a message which made me feel that I needed to leave. And too long a story, but I eventually found the courage to leave with my two daughters. I wish I could say that everything went smoothly, but it didn't. We ended up living with friends for 3 months. left with nothing, no clothes, nothing. And then eventually got rehoused by the council. And over a period of time, I went back into my profession. One of the most traumatic things that ever happened was my ex-husband tried to control even after I left. So one weekend they went to stay with him and he refused to return the children. And we then went through a very long-winded court process of many, many, many years, where he basically said I was a not fit mother and all sorts of other things. And he tried to actually legally have the kids live with him. I can only say as a Christian that God stood with me. Eventually the judge was very savvy. He had their passports, he lied, and the judge was able to know that, and so the children legally then ended up living with me, and he had to have supervised contact with them. And I would say, just going really fast, it took a long time. I'm trying to congeal a decade, 15 years, but I slowly rebuilt my life over many years. So the first time I met you, Sam, I probably just got back into medicine actually, and gone on to do specialist training. Go, next. So how can we help people? Going really fast now. As I said, ask if something is wrong, express concern, listen and validate, offer help, support the person's decisions. Quick, going really good. Don't judge or blame, don't pressurize the person, don't give advice, but don't wait for the person to come to you. If you think there's something going on, the reason why I'm alive today, and I really mean that because I was battling with depression, was my Ghanaian friend. She came to me and she said, Shade, because I used to go there whenever I got a beating, she said, you can come, I want you, if you're prepared to leave, you can come and live with me. And I owe that woman my life. I tell her even today, 18 years later, she said, oh, what are you talking about? I said, I owe you my life, and now I do want to cry. I would have committed suicide. I was so down, I was on the floor, but she stood. She took a stand. She took me in and 2 young children, and she helped us get back on our feet, as did another friend. So, steps to escaping violence. I'm sure people will do more. Report the violence. Take action and keep safe from the violence. So I think Zena touched on all those things. Reporting the violence, things you need to do, speak to somebody you trust, report the abuse to the police, because as I said, there is a crime act now. It's not hit and miss like it was for me. And if possible, get advice from an institution, organisation that deals with domestic violence, or an advisor. Quick. Some of the areas, there's all these things available now in housing. There are people, especially serving in housing, issues, mental health, social care and education and children's needs. If you want to leave, this is some of the forward planning you need to do. Yeah, very important. It's not to laugh in man if you've ever been there. You can read that. I can send out the slides later if you need to. This is some of the stuff you do in terms of forward planning. Next. These are some of the numbers. So at the end, I've just got all these numbers. Gail, can you take us to the pictures? Because I want people to see something. Stop. Go back. I want you to leave you with something very visual. And this is the bit that makes me cry. My children are the most important people to me in the world. When we started this journey, they were 7 and 4 years old when I left. This is how they look today as a survivor. Because God, I believe in God, and 2 friends stood with me. You know, it was not easy because when I first left, I lived with 1 friend during the week, and after some time I lived with the other friend over the weekend. The friend who I lived with during the week, I started working but not as a doctor. She lived her life around me. She would say, right, Shade, I want your rota. She would go to work late if I needed to go to work early so that she could take the children to work and vice versa. You know, and what I'm trying to say is the reason why they're like this now is because people stood with us. And stood with us. We made it because some people took a stand. I'm asking you, I'm appealing to you as a survivor. You know, you might not be Ruth, you might not be able to pull together a conference, but sometimes just being a listening ear. This is how we are today. I made it, we made it because people stood with us. Thank you very much.
Before we go, I need you all to stand up because this is, you know, I don't know what your journey is. I don't know whether you've been abused. I don't know whether you know people that have been abused. But I want you to know that this is about recovery. This is about us standing up with one voice, being united and saying that I don't care what's happened in my past, I'm here and I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. So I need you to really, 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 really clap for yourself. Clap as if you won £1 million. I'm here because I've lived this story. Yes, I'm a lawyer, I'm a project man, I'm all those wonderful highfalutin things, but I'm a survivor. I was married some years back to a doctor, and and it was an extremely abusive marriage. We got married based on papers. If you happen to be from Nigeria, for instance, you would understand, and it became quite clear after the first month or so, even before the marriage, there were red flags, and I'm sure that some people during the day will talk about red flags. There were red flags, but I was in love, and I ignored the red flags. Certain red flags that you need to talk to your friends about, I never did. So I sort of painted a picture that my ex-husband was an angel. And even things that he was doing, my younger sister would say, "Are you sure, Zena? Is this the guy for you?" And I'm like, yeah, he's lovely. He's a Christian, because I'm a Christian, He's a born-again Christian, but are you sure? I said, yes, he is. He's fine. We got married. Now, bearing in mind that as far as I was concerned, marriage is forever.
Yes.
If you're a Christian, and even if you're not, it doesn't really matter. Marriage is forever. If you are a Christian, the Bible says that God hates divorce. So, from day one, things were going wrong. There was, physical abuse, mental abuse. But I was saying God hates divorce. So I was praying. I was fasting. I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and taking his photo as you do. And I'm like, and doing all that, doing everything that I thought I needed to do. There was a book at the time called The Power of the Praying Wife by a lady called Stormy Ormington. I have about 7 different versions of that book. Some that were given to me by well-meaning fellow Christians. I thought I wasn't praying enough without looking at the bruises. And some that I bought myself because I thought I wasn't good enough as well. I thought if I was a better Christian, if I was a better wife, if I was more submissive, if I wasn't so out there and so bubbly, maybe I would be able to keep my marriage. That was the kind of things. And these are the kind of lies that we tell ourselves. We say to ourselves, if we're better, if we're slimmer, if we cook better, if we're more submissive. Domestic violence cuts across race, religion, ethnic group, social class. It cuts across it. You could be anybody. And the thing about being a professional woman is that we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it in the church, and that's a different thing. And this is not a church setting, so but we don't even talk about it within the professional arena. We talk. So I would, for instance, if I knew you had an issue, I would talk to you and I would counsel you and guide and all that. But if I wouldn't talk about mine, because it's not the done thing. You look all put together. If you had a bruise here, you can, now we've got MAC, so you can hide it with MAC and everything. And you can say, what happened then? You say, oh, I just bumped into something. You don't talk about it because you don't want to show your vulnerability. You don't want people to start asking, what did you do wrong? Because believe it or not, people will ask you, what did you do? And that's the worst question you could ever ask a divorce victim. And this is all off-scripted, so I'm just, completely, the question you never ask a divorce victim, what did you do? You never ever ask, because she or he, because there are guys that are divorced, that are domestic violence victims, don't ask them what they did, just listen. Don't even tell them to leave now. Just listen, and then just be there so that you can guide them. And if it's a situation where there is a threat of loss of life, for instance, then yes, I would advise that you call the authority. Now I'm hoping that this is working now. Okay. But the reason why I'm here is not so much to talk about abuse, because there are so many other wonderful professional women that are going to do that. I'm here to tell you how to move on. So how to transition from being a we, because normally if you're in a relationship, you might be with your significant other, your partner, your ex-husband, you're in a we relationship, and even if you're with your son or your daughter, and you're a single parent, it's still a we relationship, and you don't expect that your significant other or your child or your in-law would abuse you. That's not, it's supposed to be love, it's supposed to be a close relationship, but it happens. And when that happens, you feel ashamed, you feel guilty, you feel as if you've done something wrong. If you happen to have reported to the authorities, that one of the things that happens is that because of racism, the authorities don't actually react as fast as they need to. They will typically look at you and they will say, well, this is a black thing, or an ethnic thing, or an Asian thing. No, you don't want to go there, you don't want to go there. So they will not react as fast as they need to, they won't respond. And when they do respond, it's like, are you sure? So what normally happens is that women from ethnic minorities, black Africans included, don't actually report to the police. They would, if they belong to a faith organisation, they would report to their imam, or to their pastor, or to some so-called Old Moon church, bear in mind I'm now one of those, you know, and for advice. But if you haven't been there, 9 times out of 10, you can't really give proper advice. You can listen, but if you haven't worn the shoes, you can't really give that proper advice that you need to do. Now, one of the first things you need to do after you've gotten through all the domestic violence, everything's all done, and you've been able to leave that environment, one of the first things you need to do is make sure you've got your friends and family close with you and you keep in constant contact with them. The second thing you need to do is to stay active. The reason being, the more active you are, the more you're able to not be in an isolated environment where you're remembering all the things that you were told, that you were not a good mother, or you're not a good wife, or a good spouse, or you're a terrible daughter-in-law, whatever it is that they say to us. The third thing you need to do, and I think I can see if I might have something here. And I've got such lovely slides. Oh, I'm absolutely gutted. That's how vain I am. But the good thing about that is that whoever you are, you need to make sure that you maintain your personality. Don't let that be taken away from you. Whether you're quiet, whether you're lively, bubbly, don't let that be taken away from you. Now let's talk about a few stats. 1 in 3 women worldwide suffer some sort of domestic violence, be it physical, mental, sexual, and approximately 38 of all of those actually get killed worldwide. I didn't know that. I saw that the other day and I was really, really shocked. And like I said, for black African women, it thickens, the plot even thickens even further. We talked about the police and how the fact that there are potential barriers to getting help. Like, for instance, the police might not want to interfere in your domestic because they don't understand your culture. There's also the things about barrier to language. If you're new in the country and you don't speak the language and your partner does, then obviously you're not going to get well represented. Also, seeking help or trying to escape from domestic abuse as a black, Asian or minority person has lots of other complexities. For instance, people in your own community look down on you because as a community, talking about marriage, we honour marriage. We think that marriage is, not that other ethnic groups don't, but you find out that every Saturday you will see more ethnic community marriages than you would see from other races. So every Saturday in front of a mosque or in front of a church or in front of a registry, you would see people of various ethnic groups getting married, which is not the case for the other ethnic groups. So that tells me that, we still believe in marriage. How are we doing? No?
Sorry, it's not. We've not been able to get it up.
I should have put up my laptop, no problem. Now, are you still living the story of the abuse that you suffered? How many of you have suffered abuse by show of hands? There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Put mine. How many of you have friends or close family members that have also suffered abuse? Right, so you see, we're all in the right place. And how many of you are looking for strength to move on after that abuse? And by a show of hands. I like that. Pastor, you moved on. I like that. Right. We know that abusers are typically manipulative. They tell you that you're unworthy, even though they're more unworthy than you are. But all this is not true. And you need to know that you've got the strength to move on. Now, who knows Tina Turner? Yes. Right. If you might remember years ago, maybe about the time you were on the film. Okay, about the time some of us. That's right. Ike Turner, she likes her films. We need to talk later on about watch the film. You remember it's been well documented with the film and obviously in history in the 60s. She had a different name then, and she was Ike Turner's wife, and she was the cash cow. She was singing and singing and singing and churning out, albums and music, and his career wasn't doing as great. and the abuse started. I mean, it's well documented. Punches, kicks, you know, hitting, ironing, bullying, all sorts of things. But what did she do? Finally, she had the courage and she left. She left. After 14 years of marriage, she left, and she's now a stronger woman. She's in her 70s, almost 80, and she's, you know, still rocking her stuff, strutting her stuff. You know, I can't do half the things that she does with her little leather skirts and all that. But that just tells you that all of us, we have the capability and we have the capacity to be our true self. We, you know, we should not define ourselves by what someone else has told us, even if it's a positive thing. Because you've told me I'm great doesn't mean that I'm great. I need to believe that I'm great, and I need to, you know, because sometimes when people say, oh, you're so fantastic, your head swells, that doesn't mean it's true. It could be flattery. You need to know who you are from inside out. Now, number one, end all contact. So if you are still in an abusive relationship, or you know people that are, please advise them, once they've been able to leave that situation, to end all contact. Or someone, you know, has been told that you're not worth anything. You know, that I only married you because of whatever, or you were slim when I first married you, now you're fat, or you're smelly, or you're not bringing the money anymore. There's all kinds of things that you get, you know, that is not just from your significant other, but also it could be from your son. You know, it could be from your daughter. You know, it could be from your in-law. But it's basically telling you how unworthy you are, how unworthy that you are. So I need you to recognize your accomplishments. I mean, let's do that practice right now. Sort of just think about the things that you've accomplished. You don't have to tell me, and just write them down so that when you go home, you can actually look at these. You know, I'll give you 2 minutes, I've got 5 minutes, I'm really generous, I'll give you 2 minutes of my 5. Just write them down quickly. Just 5 accomplishments, even just today. Because it's really important that you notice, you know, you kind of show gratitude for where you are, but also you recognize what you've been able to accomplish, even by being here.
I just want to thank the speakers before me also, because what I work in domestic abuse, have done for 16 years, and one of the first things that go with women are their voices. They're not able to speak. So well done today. Okay. Now we're going to talk about that topic that most people always talk about. That's the first thing they ask. And in my 16 years of working in domestic abuse, I've been asked it by all angles and corners of society. Recently we give training to police officers who ask us questions. Why do women stay? Why do they stay? You know, in such horrible, toxic environment, why are women there? And why do they keep their children there with them? Very difficult if you're not in that situation or understand that situation to even think about who, me? You know, most people who have never experienced it, that's their attitude. Who, me? Never, never. So let's look at that. Now, reason why women stay. Now, we know there's situational factors, okay? There's emotional factors and there's personal beliefs. And what we're going to look at first is situational factors. What do I mean by that?
If the man has provided the house.
Economics, yes. Situational factors.
Financial.
Huh?
Financial.
Finance, yes. Economics, yes. Shame, children, yeah. I mean, shout at me, I can take it. Situational factors. Culture. Feelings. Parents. Yes. Parents, culture. Okay. That's some of the things. Anything else? Keeping up appearances. Yes.
No right to stay in the country.
Immigration, yes. You know, that really is. You know, when you have no recourse to public funds, you will sit in an abusive relationship like that. Low confidence, low self-esteem, yes.
pressure from family as well, isn't it?
Yeah, family pressure.
That's always said. Religious beliefs?
Yes, we're going to come to that when we get to personal beliefs, but we're talking with situational beliefs now, like fear of greater physical danger, not only to herself but her children, because you know perpetrators will use the children against the mother as a weapon, okay? Fear of being hunted down and suffering worse beatings, okay? Also, there's survival. She wants to survive because she's had real threats of, I'm going to kill you. Just last week I had a woman in the refuge and her husband had told her that. I'm going to sleep and when I wake up, I'm going to kill you. And prior to that, she's never been allowed out. When he goes out, she's locked in the bedroom with the 2 children. She has been pregnant every year since 2014, 15, and she's having a next one 16. Because that was what he told her she had to do. Okay? Now the way she did it, and I had to be really proud of her, was that because she was allowed no phones, no anything, she actually found a SIM while cleaning the house, and she kept that SIM for months. She didn't know what she was going to do with it, but she kept it for months. She didn't have English. She comes from Morocco.
That's right.
And what that day when he says, I'm going to sleep and when I wake up, I'm going to kill you, she believed him. She said he would have done it. He was going to kill me. And the reason was because when he walked in the room, she looked up. She's not allowed to look up. She had to keep her eyes down. Okay, but she looked up that day and you're going to die today. So while he slept, her son had a phone that he'd been playing with, and she just thought, let me see. And she plugged it in, it charged, and she put the SIM in quickly. And that's how she called her sister to tell her sister, I'm going to die today. So the sister sent the police. The rest is history, because they rescued her and she was brought to the refuge, you know. But even being in the refuge, it took her weeks to speak. Again, the voice thing, where the voice goes, you know, it's a serious thing. There's fear of emotional damage to your children, because that's what she feared the most, that these little babies, you know, who was like 1.5 and 8 months, and she was pregnant again, would be damaged if she left the dad, because culturally that's what she was grown up to believe. Fear of losing custody, because he tells her, she doesn't know the law of the country, and he tells her, in this country I rule and you do as I say, because they will lock you up. And she believes it. She doesn't know any different, she believes it. She doesn't know the currency. You know, these are real situations when you're looking about why women stay. If you think about being just dropped in some place, because again we spoke about the isolation, which comes in big, okay? Early signs when he starts telling you, and tell this to your girls as well, we do programs for teenagers, when he starts telling you, oh, I don't like your sister, oh, your mum's bossy. Early warning signs, red flag, who said it? Zena, yes, these are early signs. And we push them aside and don't even look at them. But if we didn't look at them in ourselves, we need to look at them in our daughters, in our sons, you know. One of the things I taught, I have 4 sons, and one of the things I taught them was about consent and what that meant. And your daughters, you teach about safety and about self-esteem and healthy relationships, so she doesn't stay in abusive relationships. So, also, lack of alternative housing, because earlier on, I think, Doc, you said about housing up there. Ain't no housing anymore. So when these women leave, they're going in private accommodations that cost like $1,500 a month. So that enables them never to work. You know, this is why they stay again. Because I've got to leave everything to go to private. Some of them come in working, and a room in a refuge is nearly £300 per week. And if you're working, how are you going to afford that per week? So you stay home. You stay with the abuser because you can't afford to leave. Also, some of them lack of job skills. Social isolation resulted in lack of support from family and friends, because family and friends, those well-meaning people, okay? That tell you it's only a little fight. And like you said as well, you know, what did you do to him? Why did he hit you? What did you do? And she ends up believing that, okay, it's something I did. It's something I did why I was hit. And she not only believes it, she takes it inside and it becomes a part of her. I've had women knock on the door, the office door, to ask, can I go to the toilet? Yeah. Because she has been that controlled. And that's why my passion is in, you know, bringing awareness to domestic abuse globally. Because we as women, we're like one of my clients actually said, was that it's like we're a, you know, extinct species. We're heading that way. Because women and girls were attacked everywhere. Every corner of the world we're attacked. You know? So we're still with emotional, situational factors, okay? So lack of understanding from families and friends, police, ministers. Lately I've been talking to imams. Had to go and talk to an imam the other day who you could see can read body language. Yeah? As if to say, who the hell are you? You know? I came back from Namibia the other day and met with a few people out there, the gender, you know, the whole gender-based community, because in Namibia they've got this passion killing. Hell no. There ain't no passion in killing. Let's stop wrapping these words up and making it normalized and acceptable for perpetrators to feel all right. There's no passion in killing. Can we get rid of that? That was my first question to the gender minister. Let's get rid of the passion. It doesn't go. It's not synonymous. Get rid of it. Just like there's no honor in honor killings, right? Why are we using those words or accepting them when we hear them? Throw them out. Okay, negative responses from the community, from the police, yes, because those officers I trained, they admitted, to their credit, that, yeah, when they go to a home and they see the woman, she's bleeding, but she doesn't want to give evidence, she's denying everything, they get quite annoyed. They're annoyed with her, they can't empathize with her. It is annoying for them. And it's hard to keep their professional hats on. So, also stats, one thing with the stats, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Because so many others will never tell a story. I'm meeting women in their 60s and 70s who had been through incest, everything, and had never told it until that point, in their 60s and 70s. They weren't a part of the stats. It's not there. So for everything that happens, triple it even more, because that's how bad, that's how toxic domestic, even child sexual abuse, gender-based violence, that's just how bad it is, and more. Okay, fear of the unknown. This is one of the things I come across a lot in the refuge, where the women say, better the devil you know. So they stay, because better the devil you know. And it's again to break those stereotypes, those beliefs. Very difficult. Okay, now let's talk about, even those situational factors, of course, include also ties to the home, your belongings, you know, because those women actually empower me when they come in, because I think they're so brave. You're so brave to have gotten up and left everything you ever knew and walk out. One told a story of, he sent her to the shop and told her, take your bloody kids with you, they're noisy. And she walked to the shop with her 2 children to buy him cigarettes. And she passed the shop thinking, all the way he's going to have a hand on my shoulder. All the way till she got to the police station. Only then could she. So she turned up at the refuge with just herself and the children. No ID. Took us ages to get the ID because he weren't going to give them back. If anyone can help you, I'm the only one can help you. I'm the only one can love you. And if you leave me, you see what happens to you. So when things start happening bad out there, they say, I should have stayed. He was right about this. When we're not able to get them benefits, I should have stayed. When they can't get housing, I should have stayed. What's all this for? Why did I leave? Lots of reasons why they stay. Okay, now if we look at the emotional factors, what's the number one emotional factor you would say? Fear of feeling lonely. They're alone and they feel lonely. And, you know, he's not bad all the time. They miss sex. They miss that interpretation of love that they have. And some will nip home and get it and come back to the refuge. Once we find out, of course, we only think them, but it happens. Okay, it happens, but you have to remember that they've been normalized for so long. They've normalized the whole behavior, and they really believe they can change him. Yeah, like you were saying earlier, and also Zena, you know, if I do this, then it will make things better. It's my fault because, you know what, I didn't cook on time. They find ways of justifying their behaviors. But yes, emotional factor, being alone, being on your own. I won't be able to cope because, remember, she's believed everything he's told her about her not being able to cope. So now when she has that opportunity to run, maybe the door's open and she won't even run through it. She'll stay because she's believed everything he's told her. Also, some of the things we found with the women were that she kind of feels sorry for him. You know, we've had women who come in, you know, bruised, battered, but she's sorry for him. She feels pity for him. What will he do now? Yeah, she worries.
Kidnappers too.
Yes, of course. Oh, I can go into plenty of stories like that. Yes. Yeah, so she has this attitude that if I stay, I can help him get better. Now, of course, social services doesn't allow that. Why do you think?
No, because the abuse will continue.
And what is it bad for? The children. That's right. So now you find that we get women in the refuge who come only because social services said they had to. They didn't want to, but social services said, we will take the children and you can stay with your partner, your husband, but we're taking the children. And that's the only way they come in the refuge. And then when they come, they're very resentful, they don't engage. You have very difficult time with them because they're in denial of even being abused. One of the things we do, we bring in external organizations like Mandalaya Services, run by this lady here, Tafaya Byfield, and they carry out domestic abuse awareness with the women. And 8 out of 9 women will tell you, I didn't even know that was abuse. Oh my God, I didn't know that. You know, the comments that you get, they hadn't a clue. In the 21st century, they haven't a clue that they've been abused. Okay, so he continues to emotionally blackmail her, and we mentioned it earlier in one of the talks. What does he do to emotionally blackmail her? He belittle her. Yeah. But there's another one. You said it earlier. One of you said it earlier. Huh? Suicide. Yeah, you do this, I'm going to kill myself. And she believes him because she's seen him try and cut himself before, you know, or maybe put his head in the oven, as we've heard. Hear all kind of stories. I know, we have to be professional and not laugh because it's abuse all over, so Okay, she also thinks it's really not that bad. I know people who are worse off than me. You know, I've only got a broken leg. I know friends that they've been, you know, cut, and they've got cuts everywhere, and they've been raped, and okay, and then yeah, we have the unfounded optimism that the abuser will change, things will get better, despite the evidence to the contrary. And in this, what I found with the women is that there's a kind of learned helplessness. You know, and they've learnt it. They just, and you can see them at play with their children as well. You know, and one of the things I just want to put in here is that in the refuge we don't get the movers and the shakers like my doctor. We've had women who are working, like I said before, and it's like that's their only link then to normality, because everything else they've been going through with this man has been crazy. So actually being able to allowed to go out to work 9 till 5, that's their normal, and they don't want to let that go. Let's skip that now and just go to some personal beliefs then, because I've got 2 minutes. Personal beliefs. What would their personal beliefs be, do you think?
Faith.
Their faith? Yeah.
Shame.
Shame. Oh God, shame is a big part of it. The shame that, you know, oh my God, he doesn't, to hit me, he doesn't love me. To let everybody know I'm hard to love. Oh my God, you know, it's hard for us.
And also to be called Mrs.
Yes, it's a title, isn't it? So, yes. Okay, and also we have the personal beliefs that, you know, quite rightly, parenting needs a partner for the kids. Okay, it's a balance, quite rightly. Religious, we've said that already. You know, I swore till death us do part, or you know, in the Muslim, my family would not allow that to happen. They would kill me first. So, you know, it's up to the woman to make the marriage work, which I've heard from many of my women. It's because of me I didn't make the marriage work. So, personal beliefs. They believe in marriages forever, no matter what. That violence is the way all partners relate. Like, is it your mother-in-law says, all husbands beat their wives. Yeah, we've heard that a lot, especially from our African women who pass through the refuge. That's one of the things, you know, oh, my mother says that. My father did it to her too, you know? Yes, but it's not acceptable. We shouldn't normalize it. And only then are we going to be able to break that cycle that we keep talking about, that keeps continuing, that cycle. Only then are we going to break it by teaching our girl children and our boy children, because it's so important to get boys involved in this awareness, this fight against gender-based violence. We have to get the boys on board and involved, and to understand how to respect a girl. And for the girl to understand why I deserve respect. So she carries herself in that way. So just snippets of it. I've got some information over there on the stall if you want to grab a card and everything like that. And I'm sure I would love to talk to you all afterwards. Is that it, Esther? Have I run out my 2 minutes? Yeah. So that's my 2 minutes. So, but afterwards, please talk to me. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you, Ruth, for putting this on. I don't think you could ever appreciate or grasp the power of what this has done. And I hope that this is not a one-off thing. You know, it's very, very needed. Very, very needed. Very, very needed. I feel like people feel safe to talk. You know, have you noticed that? I feel like people feel safe to talk about their experiences. You know, things that you would not feel okay to open up about, you know, in another setting. People feel like, oh yeah, I can identify with that. I can identify with that. You know, all these experiences. I'm a Christian. So when I went through my own experience, when I came out of it, what God said to me then was that comfort others with the same comfort with which you have been comforted. Yes. And that's what spurred me on. So I'd like to start my own talk with a story about a woman. So I know a woman who went through all of these abusive relationships that you've physical, sexual, financial, emotional, any which way. Went through all of it without going into all the gory details. Oh, by the way, I felt prompted to appreciate our brothers in the house. Thank you. Because sometimes, you know, all these things, when we're talking about it, we come across, even though we didn't mean to, but we come across as if we hate men. We love you and we appreciate you. And yes, I do. I'm an advocate of not empowering, appreciating men, because they have taken a lot of beating. You know, they have been stigmatized by the few that don't appreciate their wives. So we have tarred everybody, all the males, the same broad brush. I want to say to you that I honor you and I respect you. Wow. So this woman went through, in my own case, I was naive. I came from a very sheltered, protected, loving home. I'm the first of 7 children. You know, everybody loves everybody in my house. You know, I didn't know any different. I was so naive to the point that I didn't believe that you could lie to me. Why would you want to lie to me? Do you know what I mean? I would believe whatever you say to me. I wasn't brought up to feel that you would lie to me. So we're really, really protected and sheltered in that regard. And we're 4 girls and 3 boys. Us girls were our daddy's princesses. You touched my dad. My dad would personally beat you up. No, seriously, he would. And once he beat you up, he will now go and take you to the police station and order them. You know how it is in Nigeria. Order them to lock you up and give the strict orders that nobody was allowed to bail you. When he felt ready, he will come and bail you out himself. Okay. I come from Lagos State in Nigeria, and from royal background. So that status, right? My father is the Odofin of Lagos State, and now he is the interim king of Oto. Okay, so so he feel that why would a person of his own caliber, why would somebody assault? You know, you didn't even tell us off. You would honor my dad by going to him and say, Your Highness, sir, your child did this to me, and then he will deal with it himself. Rather than for you to take laws into your own hands, take matter into your own hands, and begin to talk to us. No, you didn't talk to my dad's children anyhow. So I grew up with that I was important.
Yes, you are.
I grew up with the sense of, you know, the world is full of bed of roses. Everybody is nice and wonderful. and I got married. Then I grew up. And I did not get married in Nigeria. I got married here. We've known each other since we were 10, 11, so we were all our teenage years. We were friends. You know, when we were teenagers and going to college and stuff, like, I knew his girlfriend, he knew my boyfriend and all of that, but we were friends. Somehow, we fell into each other's arms. He came to England, I came to join him, we got married here, life began. And then I grew up. It was this, he could talk down at me, told me how ugly I was, this, that, and the other. I was always having children. You know, not allowed to write. In those days, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't the internet and there wasn't the mobile phone. So our only method of communicating was letter. So I wasn't allowed to write letters to my dad. So I was isolated. Okay, I was afraid, didn't know anybody. He was the only friend I knew. He was the only family member I knew here in England. Didn't know anything except for my church. Okay, and even there was a time I wasn't allowed to go to church. I wasn't allowed to smile. I wasn't allowed to wear underwired bra. And I was not allowed to wear makeup. And do you know when this thing is happening to you and you constantly, no, I know him. We used to model together in Nigeria. No. We grew up together. He's my friend. No, that's not happening. But it was happening. It was happening. It was difficult for me to accept, to agree that it was happening. So it's a lot of beating, a lot of all sorts of. But then, I was gobby. I learned how to be gobby. I learned how to answer back, and that earned me a lot of beatings. But I found out that I could hurt him with my words. He made me to discover that, wow, so there are things I could say to you that could hurt you. Bring it on. So I began to see all this. He literally opened me up. I discovered quite a side to myself that was not there, because in my household we weren't allowed to be spiteful to one another. We didn't use bad languages. All those things I wasn't allowed to do when I was growing up at home. I could do it with him. I could cuss him out. Because he will curse me, he will curse my parents. Hang on, they're not even here. They haven't offended you. It's just me and you, you know. So he cursed my mother, so I cursed 10 times, you know, his own mother. So then he said, oh, so now you're beginning to have friends. Because, oh, by the way, I wasn't allowed to have friends. So now you're having friends that are teaching you. I said, listen, boy, nobody's teaching you. You are the one who's teaching me. You're teaching me. No, I'm learning from the master, you know, type of thing. Well, anyway, when he realized that I was beginning to, and the child benefits money was being paid into his account. I won't see a penny of it. There'll be many times I will be pregnant, I'll be seriously hungry, and stuff like that. So I opened my own bank account, because, you know, I was, you know, paying into his bank account. Opened my own bank account, wrote to the child benefit office, that they should, you know, just changed everything without telling him. So he was beginning to, what's wrong with this girl? She's kind of, yeah, well, he really did open me up. He trained me really well. And I was a good student. I was a good student as well. I learned very well from him. But I just, one thing, what I'm going, because my assignment this afternoon is rising from oppressive experience and moving forward. That is my, so I'm telling you all this for you to know where I've had to come from. But there's something that my parents have instilled in me before I came here, is that I was important and I had a purpose to fulfill. And nothing except death was going to take that away from me. I was resolute. I've always been resolute. I always saw myself, you know, doing great things. You know, that he would be beating me on the floor. I said, listen, you better kill me, because when I get up, I'm getting up, I'm getting dressed up, and I'm going to go. You know, so he would not want me to. He was just kind of, with hindsight, I find that he didn't have what I had in terms of the passion. He is a visionary himself, hardworking, but he's very competitive. Okay, so, and he was competing with me. Okay, and when I would come up with all these ideas and things, and let's do this, and I was naive because my husband is my friend. You know, I would tell him all these ideas. In the days when there was no internet, I was ordering things from Italy. You know, delivering. Supplying things to different countries, and how do you even do it? You know, but instead of us to work together, and this was like in the late 80s, early 90s, imagine where we could have been together. But he brought everything down. But I said, you are not going to stop me. You're not going to stop me. So when I had my youngest is 23 now. He's my son. I call him my only begotten son. I'm so proud of him. He's 6'7". He's my gentle giant. He's very broad, very handsome. I love him. I didn't bring any pictures. He's my gentle giant, very quiet. When I was pregnant with him, I had him in February. 28th of February. But when I was pregnant with him, almost had him on Valentine's Day. His dad took me because I love photography. As one of my hobbies, I love taking pictures. Thank God for selfies. You know, one of my friends said, you know what he said to me is that a selfie that keeps the haters away. I have to take a selfie. You know, from when I was a child, I loved taking pictures. So my husband, he never really stayed with me per se. Do you know what I mean? He was always coming and going. That's how I was being pregnant and having children. When he was around, it was very, very oppressive. I wasn't allowed to watch the telly. I had to quickly switch the telly off. As soon as I heard him put the key to the door, I wasn't allowed to be on the phone. I couldn't hug people. I couldn't say hello. You know, stuff like that. So when he came around, I told him to it was a Valentine's Day. I said, take some photo. So I was pregnant, and me when I'm pregnant, I am pregnant. Do you know what I mean? You'll see the belly before you see me. In those days, when they gave you income support, they call it gyro book. And there's the top, you went to the post office to collect it, and there was a top sheet on top of that book that contained your details, your NI number, your name, and everything. So he tore it off. He tore it off, attached it to my picture, wrote a very nice letter to the Home Office. Yeah. So my journey began. I began to run from pillar to post. But then yeah, it was a nice letter. Well, I'm grateful that he did, because if he didn't, I probably wouldn't have had my indefinite leave to remain in the UK today. You know, he meant it for evil, but God turned it around for good. Hey, it's all good. You know, yeah. So then I was beginning to take control, you know, by this time. So he left, and the last time that he would finally leave, I had to go to the opticians. I worked in this in the West End at the time, so my optician was not too far away from where I worked. But this I wasn't at work. So could you look after the children? He came around. Remember, he never really lived with us. He came around. So could you look after it? I needed to go to the optician. I was expecting him to say no, he couldn't, but he said yes. Okay, so let me quickly run before he changed his mind. I didn't know that he had an agenda. By the time I came back, he had planned it. He cleared the house, the bed, the chair, the clothes, television, everything. The only thing that we had left was what we were wearing. If you made a noise in the flat, it would echo. So I was standing there with my baby was this was in April, February, March, April, 2-month-old baby. My baby was 2 months. My second daughter was just 2+, and my eldest was 3, because just 15 months between my my girls. Yeah. Now what? I'd never said anything to my dad all these years. As far as he was concerned, life was still a bed of roses. Everything was good. So that was the first time I would pick up the phone, and I cried, and I told him, because I wouldn't even cry. You know, he took everything. All I would say to him, little things, please, little minds. If that's all you know. And it would hurt him. The fact that I wasn't showing him that I was hurting, it would hurt him even more. But I would not break down. I wouldn't allow him to see me break down. And the more this guy, he saw that I was strong, the worse he got. But then he wasn't there. I just came home to an empty flat and children by themselves, and I cried.
He left his children behind?
Yeah. So where do you begin? Number one, you have to accept that it happened. See, you cannot conquer what you don't confront. And you cannot confront what you don't identify. Accept it for what it is. It happened. Do you know, when I was in Nigeria, I did broadcasting in the 80s. I was a presenter announcer at NTA Tejo show for people who come from my neck of wood. So you can imagine, and when I left the television, I was working at Lintas Advertising in Ikoyi. So everybody used to tell me that he was beneath me. Even his friends told him that she couldn't marry you, she's too much for you. But I don't like, what would you, he's educated, he's intelligent. You know, there isn't any subject that he couldn't engage in conversation. He's very smart, very intelligent, very, I always made fun that he has all the knowledge and everything. I just had the phonetics. I always made that joke where dynamic duo. He has all the knowledge. He will engage in conversation at any level, any subject, art, science, whatever. He did banking. He was working in the bank. So I did not see what they were. My mom. And by the way, he was an amateur wrestler as well.
Wow.
And a champion. I remember the first time he came to see me at house. He has all these things bulging up. My mom said, I just felt that they were snubbing him because he didn't belong to the kind of class that I belonged to. And I felt that was wrong, and that drew me closer to him. What you think that, accept that, look, it is happening. Confront it. And I said, in some cases where that relationship has broken down irrevocably, or that the abuse has happened, in order to heal and move on, it is important to identify the issue, confront it so you can conquer it. Don't excuse it. He's very, not soft-spoken, but I don't know, he's one of those people that he will never raise his voice. He never, ever raises his voice. And he always say to me that, nobody knows me like you do. Emotional blackmail. And so that I could excuse his bad behavior, I could accept his bad behavior, stop excusing
and everyone. Thank you for an opportunity to come before you to share. Okay. When I went through mine, I was very young. I was 24. So mine was at 24. The person I got married to at the time, I knew him from Nigeria. I was 10, so we practically grew up together. He came here before me, and he was in contact with my sister. So when I came in, my sister did advise me to say, he's here. And I said, oh yeah. I had this nonchalant attitude that, if it's meant to be, will be. If it's not, whatever. But we got together. We got married. I was in uni because I did my degree in Nigeria. And I thought, that degree, my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. So, yeah, I did law. And when I did law, I passed it. And I thought to myself, now I can go and do what I want to do. So I came back here and I did applied economics. So I was in uni, but I did not know it was abuse. But when he's talking, just normal chatty talk, or we are discussing about economics, which is my field, I realized that he puts me down, and I thought, I know what I'm talking about. I'm actually studying that. I actually know what is going on here. But I just put it aside that, whatever, you can talk, I don't care. And left it. But we don't argue that much. So on this fateful day that I'm going to share with you, the previous day I was not feeling well, so I was ill. So he said, oh, you know what, turn off all the phones and just sleep. And he went off to work. Because he has just finished his master's then. He went off to work. It was June the 24th, 1990 something. So I slept off, and I woke up about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I called him to say, I've woken up. And he said, oh, I'm on my way home, let's go out. So I thought, oh, let's go for a drive. So we went for a drive, went to Hyde Park Corner, we had fun. It was like, and I was like, I've not eaten all day, can I just have an ice cream? On my way back, I said, let's go to my sister's. I said, no, I'm tired, I'm not going. So he said, come, let's go home. So we went home, just chilled out as normal. Having fun, just sat and just conversation and watching. And all of a sudden, something clicked off. Nothing, no argument, nothing whatsoever. Something clicked off in his head, and then it was like somebody I didn't know. He became like a madman in the same house that I lived in. And the first thing he said was, "Come to the kitchen." I thought, "For what?" "Look outside, it's full moon." I thought, "So? What does full moon mean?" His elder brother is into astrology, so they actually say, well, when there's full moon, then he has a temperament because he's born in July. I tell him, I don't want to know. I'm April, so his brother wanted to tell me about mine. I just said, I don't. Just keep it to yourself. I'm strong-willed like that. I don't want to know. Just keep it to yourself. But he tells him because his wife, he lived in Nigeria. His wife too was April. So he told him that they're very strong-willed people. They're very stubborn people, but they're very nice people, very committed and very loyal people. And I said, keep it to yourself. If that is true or not true, I might just be a different person. And the next thing he said was about the moon, and he went off and said, "You know what? I've done it before." So I looked at him. "What have you done before?" "I've done it to my mom. I've done it to my dad." And I thought, "But your dad is here. Your dad is alive. So is your mom. And I know all your family. There are a family of 6, and there's only one girl. And his sister lived with us. So his sister became our sister. So we don't look at each other as..." So we became family friends. So it wasn't like a stranger. And I thought, I know all your family, including your little brother. I know all of the younger ones. So what are you talking about? And the next thing, it was instant. I sat down. I was on the sofa. I sat down and some instant. I was a Christian, not a born-again Christian at the time. My sister was. And my sister said she had a dream. She had the same dream 3 days consecutively, whereby someone was in danger. She didn't know who he was. Because she just gave her life, she didn't know what to do. But the day this fatal thing happened was the last day she had that dream. So as he came back, I looked, he had a knife. And I thought to myself, he's going to kill me. I'm dead, because I don't know what's going on here. And the first thing he did was punch the door, and he had a dent. When I thought, God, this guy is strong, I'm dead. But the first thing that came out of my mouth was, don't kill me. And God loves me. Everyone that knows me, Ayo knows me, I bear Femi, Olufemi. I will not lie to you, I hated the name. I just hate the name because it was a guy's name and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. In school I beard Femi, but I just didn't like it. I just don't like it. Because every time they say, but it's a boy's name. It's a boy's name and you're a girl. I'm like, oh, I'm done with explaining. So I thought, you know what? I'll go by my middle name. I just go by Anne. So everybody calls me Anne. Little did I know that there's a reason why they gave me Femi. Femi means God loves you. I did not know. God loves me. And it's for me to love me. I got up from the sofa and I laid flat on the floor with my chest to the floor. And I said, don't kill me. And all I knew he was doing was stabbing me consistently. I got stabbed, and now everybody's, if I say how many times, you'll be thinking, I'm lying. I got stabbed 33 times. I got stabbed 33 times. And the last thing I said was, don't do it, it's not worth it. Little did I know that he was going to commit suicide. He dropped the knife and jumped from a 13-story building. So I am a survivor of that, but the mental torture of that as well. At the age of 24, I'm the last born of 5. And the first thing I said was, why me? I'm the youngest, for crying out loud. Why do I have to go through all of that at the age of 24? I've got older ones, not that I wish it on them. Why can't they go through that? Why me? So, I was more angry. I was hospitalized. I picked up the phone. I heard a loud bang. Boom! I thought, what was that loud bang? I got up. I looked. I was drenched in blood. I picked up the phone and I called an ambulance for him, not for me. When the ambulance came, they came for him, but he was already gone. But I didn't call an ambulance for myself. It was only when the paramedics came in and they looked at me and they thought, she's going. I'm concerned for her because of her jugular bone. She's got stabbed. And I thought that was when I knew that, you know what, I'm going to bleed to death. But I didn't. I survived it. 33 times I got stabbed, including my jugular bone, including my head, my back, anywhere you can think of. I see the marks to remind me of, yes, this is how many times I was stabbed. But I survived it. I was in hospital for 4 weeks. And I thank God that the detective that was in charge of the case, because now they've charged me with murder. Yes. On top of that, they've charged me with murder because they believe that I actually killed him. Yeah. I can't even lift this guy off the floor. He goes to the gym like 4 times a week, so he's pumped up. And this is me, like this. I've always been this, I can testify, I've always been like this. Even when I was pregnant, people thought, oh yeah, she's going to put on more weight. And then I had it, I went back straight off. And they were like, are you ever going to put on weight? And I think, I want to put on weight. So, and I thought to myself, in hospital, this detective was very brilliant. And he said to me, what happened? And I told him. And he came back 2 days later. And he said to me, everything you said is the way we found it when we got there. And I said, that must be God, because I don't think I remembered anything. I'm not a Christian then, remember, but I was brought up from a Christian home. So I had my Christian beliefs. I read my Bible. I pray. But I'd not given my heart and my soul to Christ. And my sister keeps on telling me, and I say, oh, yes, you people have come again. Please, just leave me out of this. But that fateful day I left the hospital, she said to me, you're going to church on Sunday. And I said, yeah. There was no argument. I had no argument. And I went to church, but she didn't come to church with me. She had to work. And I went. And no one had to tell me to come out. With my bandage and my crooked, I went out and I gave my life to Christ at 24. I say all of that to say this is it. I had trust issues. I had issues from birth. Now I realize that yes, it's part of rejection. My dad wanted the girl. Now he wanted the boy. I was the girl. So even though my dad was a lovely man, for 3 months he didn't carry me, but he did everything he wanted for me. Everything I needed, he provided. The day he lifted me in his arms, he cried for the whole day. 3 months he didn't touch me. He would look at me, he would do everything. The 3rd month he lifted me in his hands and he cried. But regardless of that, I wanted a boy, she's a girl, she's still my child. I'm the last one. So I've suffered rejection like that. Little did I know that he had a mental issue with me, and I'm looking for something that has not been lost. And when I gave my life to Christ, the first thing God said to me was, affliction will not arise in your life again. Yeah, for what is affliction? Someone had to break it down. Someone had to break it down for me that, affliction in your life will never arise again, girl. And I took it literally. And I began to prophesy it into every other area of my life. And someone after how many years said, do you want to get married? I thought, oh yeah, I want to get married. Why not? Why can't I get married? I'm still young. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And then when the realities, I thought, oh no, I don't think I want another man because I can't be dealing with all this foolishness. I'm going to die in the next man's hand. So I had trust issues. So issues began to arise. And I began to have to deal with them. And God said to me, trust in me. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways I will acknowledge. I will be with you. And he said, remember, I love you. My message to someone today is, I've been through that. I got stabbed 33 times. I hear in the news now, they get stabbed once. And they are gone. I was stabbed 33 times in my jugular bone, whereby I should have gone, but God preserved me. Why did he preserve me? I have a voice. I have a voice. There is something he wants to use me for. I now began to realize what he is. Ministering to women. Little did I know that if I didn't go through this, I would not have compassion like that. I would be quite honest because I don't understand it. But I went through that for somebody else not to go through that. And God doesn't look at, okay, you are young or you are old or whatever you are. Because he could have taken any one of my older ones, but he didn't use any one of them because of the purpose he has for me. And what I want to share with you today is that you too have a voice. The people you are going to speak to, they have a voice. We all need to get together, come together, share, and tell them they have a voice. And if God can do it for me, He will surely do it for anyone else. He is not a respecter of person. I was young when I went through that. I was angry. I had the whys and whys and whys. But now I realize why. And after that, I've gone to achieve so much. Yes, I did my degree. I became a mortgage consultant. Yes, I did all of that. And God said, no, I want you to go back to school and teach. Now I'm a teacher. I teach. I'm a counselor, therapeutic counselor. And I talk to people. And I realize that you need this. And I thank you that you've given me an opportunity to share my story. Thank you, everyone.
Like Esther said, my name is Chi, and for a lot of people that know me, they call me Coco. I don't know why, but I'll tell you that later. But my name is Chi, Knowles, but I'm not Beyonce's Knowles sister. Like everyone wants to say, oh, you're Beyonce. No, I'm not Beyonce's sister. So I wish I am. Thank you, Ruth, for inviting me to come and speak today. Actually, this topic we're speaking today, domestic violence, is very close to my heart. A lot of people see me as bubbly as ever, and they think, oh, she got it all, and nothing has ever happened to her. I am a survivor. I have seen it all. I have suffered violence, and like Arinzi said, she had a husband that was doctor. Mine was a pilot. Everyone thought, oh, there's nothing wrong with this marriage. Nothing is happening. I am two-person. You can see me outside. I'm bubbly. I'm nice. I can do anything. You think there's nothing wrong with this woman. There's nothing. But when I go home, I've got a different clothes to wear. My life changes. I am been beaten up. My ex now is alcohol related. So I'm coming from a different yeah. So whenever he's drunk, I become a punching bag. And I've got a son. He was 7 years old when this was going on, and I'll just cry, just wrap my son up. So because I don't want him to see what's going on, we just go and hide. And I took that on for so long. Like you said, how do you know? You don't want to go anywhere. You're ashamed. You don't want to tell anybody what's going on. When I'm ready to go to a party, I dress up she's on the dance floor, she's having fun, but you don't know what I'm going through. So this happened one day. He beat me up, I love braiding my hair. He pulled me up. My half of the hair was on the floor. So that's the day I had a wake-up call. That happened in front of my son, and I had enough. So what I did, I called the police because I've been threatening him that I would divorce you if you continue doing this. He said, I can't do it. If I do it, he will kill me. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm the only person here. And my story, how is I'm a Nigerian, but I've been in this country for nearly 20 years. And I met my husband in Nigeria as well. He's white. So my story is totally different. So it's a different story. So we came back here and I was on my own. Just no friends when I first arrived in this country. I had no friends, I had no family. People come here with their family and I came here on my own, just with my son. So when he told me if I divorce him, I've got nowhere to go and he will kill me. So I was like, okay, I don't want to get killed and I don't know anyone. And I didn't know there was help out there. So I just went quietly, closed my mouth, shut up, and that's it. But it was one day, that beating, my hair was on the floor. I wasn't bleeding. I called the police and they were actually quite good. So the policeman that came said, because I've called police several times, it's not just one off. I've called them and like you said, they'll come and they say, oh, it's a marital thing. There's nothing they can do. They said, just be careful next time. And they would just go. What they did, sometimes they would take him away and maybe we'll have like a 2-hour or 4-hour sleep or that they relax that day and we're like, okay, they've taken that away. But he will return back next day. So the problem continues. And so one day, the policeman, I called about 4 times, I called the police. So the last time the police came, he said, took me outside, a guy, and he said to me, I'm not going to talk to you as a policeman. I'm going to talk to you as a man, as a human being. If I come back here next time, I will take your child away. Because this child is experiencing a lot of things and you're not doing anything. You seems like the only responsible person here, the parent. The other man, which is my ex, he's zoned out. He's drunk. So he doesn't know what, even if he kills me, that's what the police, even if he kills me, he will go to prison and he will sober up. You're dead. And your husband has been taken, or your child has been taken, maybe a carer. What are you going to do? So I went and cried. I cried and I said, what am I going to do? What am I gonna? And I depended on my husband for so long. I've traveled with him, his job and everything. I left everything. So I depended a lot on him. I didn't have anything. Not that I didn't have anything. We shared everything together. And so when he said, well, if you want to divorce me, I will, close the bank account and everything. So I was like, what am I going to... So that's that manipulation again. A lot of people don't know the violence, domestic, it comes with different colors. It's different. A lot of people, and that's what I want to actually help a lot of ladies. People, we get manipulated with husband. You get somebody that been or like get violence at home and they don't talk about it. Like in Nigeria, they will give you a car. Like the men are actually very good at it. They cover it up. They will buy you a big car, big shop, give it, and you don't know what's just to close your mouth. You don't have to go. And when you tell your friend that I'm going through this, they're like, but he's doing this to you. He's love you. That is not love. That's not love. And that's what I want to do. But my own case is different. So when my husband told me that he would block everything, and I'm like, okay, fine. I've got to have a plan B. Because when all this was happening to me, I become kind of stronger, my case was different. I become a fighter because I didn't want to lose anything. So I was ready to fight him. I said, I'm going to divorce you because you've caused me and my son this grief. I'm going to divorce you. I don't care what happens. I might be here on my own because you think nobody's going to help me. I don't know anything about the law and all. So I went, start learning everything about the law. What is my right in this country? Because a lot of people, a lot of women, they just walk away. I'm not ready to walk away. So, yes, true. I am not ready to walk away because we are so scared. We don't know our right. We just walk and then we start life all over again and let him, and he's going to start life. He's getting away with it. So what I did was, I'm going to divorce you and we're going to share things. So he didn't like that. So he now closed everything we have that we have always shared together. He closed it. All right, okay. I did my math. I went and found a lawyer, and she said, yeah, you have a right. This house is for you and your child, and he can share as well, but he has stopped you moving. Your career has been on hold. You're following him, doing everything, and he wants to take everything. That's not going to happen. We're going to fight. So I said, I don't have money. She said, okay, you go to go and get help. So I went to see, what do they call them? And they said, oh, we can't actually help you. I'm like, I said, why? He said, well, you have a lot of things. You're asset rich. I'm like, I'm asset rich. I don't have money. They said, but you have something. You just have to. If you move, then we can help you. They want me to be poor before they help me. That's another thing we have to look at. You have to be like dead before they help you. So seriously, you have to. And so I said, okay. My lawyer now said, we have to fight. So I have some money, I have some savings. So I used that. I sold a lot of things because I needed to get out. My son has started suffering now. So, and he was my reason why I did what I did. He was my biggest why. Because I didn't want to see him suffer again. I suffered, I've helped him to cover up what his father was doing to me. But it was the day he did it in front of him. That's the day I draw the line. And so I fight for divorce without him knowing. I fight for divorce. And the day I was still scared of him, now I have conjure on him that he cannot touch me again. Although we're living in the same house, he cannot touch me, he cannot talk to me, he cannot. We started, although the house was big enough to accommodate both of us, so it's like a big wall. So he was there, I'm there with my child, and so it was enough. But I lived with a man that was nearly killed me for nearly 5 years, going through divorce. The same house. But I'm a fighter. I'm a survivor. And the law was on my side as well. So the social service, they came because of what was going on. They came and said, this child has suffered a lot. We don't want this man to be in the same house. And he doesn't have anywhere to go. This is his house. They don't care about me anymore. So the social service said, actually it was good for me. They forget me because I'm the adult now. So they want to take care of my child. So they said they would take my ex out of the house. That's how I got rid of him. And I stayed in, although he still got a share of the house. But I paid him off and I stayed in that house. So I fought. He thought he can take everything. He nearly killed me. I suffered a lot, although I don't talk about it. This is really, Ruth, this is really, really amazing thing you're doing. I tend to bottle a lot of things because I'm ashamed of telling people what my journey. I tend to like tell them the good part, but what I have actually gone through is a lot. And it's the same man, he thought he will take everything away from me. he went to Nigeria because that's where we got married. He thought if he because he's actually like a Nigerian, he think if he goes to Nigeria to divorce, I was divorcing him here, he went to Nigeria to start a divorce. This is how, so when they took all his money and he said, what do we want to do now? Because then he knows that I'm not playing. Because before I've threatened him about divorce, I'm going to divorce, he thought I was joking. But when he thought I wasn't joking anymore, that's when he thought, let's talk. Well, it's too late. Talk to your lawyer, I'll talk to my lawyer. So that's how it was going. So what my topic is today is life after domestic violence or divorce. So the recovery for survivors of abuse is not often talked about. What happens after you leave? How do you go about rebuilding a normal life after divorcing an abusive husband? With divorce often comes a feeling of shame, low confidence, and low self-worth. As if people who got divorced have done something wrong or failed somehow. It's only natural to perhaps feel scared at finding yourself single again. You may feel alone, isolated, or surprised by who has turned their back on you. You will lose a lot of friends because at times they might not believe what you're going through. My friends, they didn't believe me at first when I told them what was going on because they saw my ex as a nice person. If he comes here, he will tell you stories, what he has achieved, and where he has been. He's the friendliest person. You guys will not, you will think, if I tell you the story, you will think, oh, gee, what is wrong with you? This guy is nice. This guy is a lovely guy. And you said no one knows that. So he got that personality that he shows people. But what he was doing behind closed doors, what I was going through behind was totally different things. So after escaping and divorcing an abusive partner or husband, starting a new life can feel empowering. And that's where I stand now. It can feel empowering. You have freedom. You can move on again. Life does not have to stop because you divorced or because you come out from abuse. You have to move on. Just to show them that you actually can move on. You can actually do it yourself again. You don't have to depend on them ever again. You can live again. And you're not on your own. That's what I have found out now. I am not on my own anymore. This journey, a lot of women, we tend to not to talk about what we've gone through. But coming here today, I've seen that I've gained sisters that we actually, although our journeys are different, but there's something we have in common. And that is beautiful to keep going. And with Ruth, we've become friends now. And that's amazing. Regaining our self-esteem after domestic violence, it takes time. It's important we work on it daily. Just as we work on our body after injury, building up confidence in yourself is especially important if you have children who were also in the abusive situation with you. Your children will imitate your actions. They will look at what you're doing, your attitude, your emotions. If you're showing confidence and self-appreciation, they will be more likely to feel the same about themselves. Life after divorce and domestic violence is different for each survivor. Change is always difficult. Even if it's what we want and change for the better, the adjustments we must make, not only to our daily lives, but our way of thinking, are so huge, we may be left overwhelmed. Sometimes the change we're going through, sometimes you feel like, I think it was the doctor that said it, when you're feeling overwhelmed of what's going on, you start having double mind. You said, maybe I should have stayed. Maybe I should have, oh my God, life becomes so, you're like, oh, maybe I should have managed it. Because being an African person, we're good at enduring things. And we think, oh, I should have just let him just beat. At least there's no blood in. That is the killer, because you're dying inside. You might, if there's a blood on your skin, it's better. The doctor sees and then they treat you. But that wound inside, that's the silent killer, and that's the one a lot of people don't see, and that's the damaging bit. So, successfully escaping and recovering from an abusive relationship involves more than just leaving and getting on an abuse to stay out of your life. It's rediscovering oneself and believing again in the most basic of belief many take for granted. It's saying, my life is mine again. I deserve to be happy. I have value as a human being, as a woman, as a mother, as a friend, as a career woman, as a worker, whatever it is. My action did not cause his actions. And that's what we need to believe. Your action, my action, did not cost whatever. It's not your problem. You didn't cause that. Violence and pain are not part of a loving relationship. My body is mine now. I am not defined by the trauma I experienced. When someone hurts me, it's not my fault. So we should know that it's not our fault that what we experience is not because we deserved it. We don't deserve it. You will start to live after you leave a violent relationship. That's not the end of you. It's an unfolding, an unleashing of yourself, and the most amazing time ever. Once you choose yourself first, self-love, you need to start taking care of yourself again. God or the universe, whatever you believe, will jump in to assist you. Whatever it is, he will jump in. Once you take action to help yourself, God will send a helper in a human form. He will not come down from heaven. He will come down as a sister, as a brother, to help you, to assist you. And that journey will be a better journey. So, how do you rebuild yourself? You have a new dream. While in the abusive relationship, we dare to dream. Now is the time to start dreaming again. Our needs and wants change. That's okay. That is normal. Better to change our mind and move forward than to plug away at something we no longer want. Be patient with yourself. Think about how you treat a best friend who has just been through the same situation. You likely wouldn't tell them to just get over it already. You have to tell them to take it easy. It's one day at a time. Because the violence I went through, it's almost like at the beginning of the marriage. I saw it coming, but when you're like, oh, you just got married and everyone was like, oh, congratulations, nice, he's a white man, oh my God. But immediately I went in that house, I saw what was going on. I like to drink, but his own was essence. It was too much. And as a pilot, drinking, that's not allowed. That's not allowed. But what saved him was, back in Africa, was they fly 2 crews. So if actually when he's drunk, one of the pilot will cover him up. So he knew what he was doing. So they will cover him up and he will fly in the afternoon. So then he's already sobered up. And the day he's quite drunk, he will not go to work. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. Spend time with people who build you up. Try to get out and connect with others as much as possible. Be it with good friends, over lunch, or a support group. Or hire a coach. A life coach saved me because I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know where to go. But I found a coach, and she didn't help me. She didn't ask me to leave my marriage, but there's a lot of things that she was saying that I kind of get. Because sometimes when you hear it from another person, you're like, oh my God, okay. So she helped me a lot. So, and that's what motivated me to train as a life coach, so that I can be able to help other women that was going through what I went through, or similar something, because a lot of us don't want to talk. So since I have opened up, even my own side, being on interracial relationship, there's a lot of women there that don't want to talk. And they close their mouth. It's not just Nigerian men beating them. There's another set of women suffering in an interracial relationship. And they are going through hell. And they don't know what to do. They don't know their rights. Or even though they know their rights, they just don't want to do anything. They are afraid, they are ashamed, because people will laugh at them. But once you know your right, and that's what we need to touch. Once you know your right, you can do anything that you want to do. Thank you all for listening.
Well, thank you very much again, Ruth, for actually inviting me here to speak today. And I'm absolutely honoured to be here amongst you, all of you that are here, and also to hear the stories that I've heard so far. I haven't had the experiences that a lot of women here have had in terms of abuse, but I am a divorced woman. And as a lot of people have said already about how they have discovered themselves, or they discovered themselves after divorce. You know, there's certain, coming from a Nigerian or African background or a black background, sometimes you are kind of like told that unless you are married or with a man that you are nothing. And therefore, if you then stop being with that man, then you're even worse than nothing, because you couldn't even keep a man. You know, as in, it's almost as if that's what you're born for. You're born to be married and to have children. Thank you very much. You're born to be married and have children, and if you can't do that, or you can't keep that, then there's obviously something wrong with you. So then when people do go through divorce, and I'm sure Zena must have touched on this when she had her talk, because I know that's your area, there's the stigma of, okay, so, you know, so who are you? What are you? You're not a Mrs. anymore. You don't have that title anymore. So, but as a lot of people I'm sure have said, even from the ones that I've missed, is that a lot of people discover themselves after they get divorced. And it's amazing. I find that quite amazing. Now, I am all for marriage. You see, I've got kids, and I'm praying and believing that they'll meet the right person, and that they will get married and, you know, live happily ever after. That's what my desire is. But sometimes it doesn't work out. And I think it's amazing how, I'm a Christian and I believe in God wholeheartedly, and I think it's amazing how He's able to change things around and use things that everybody else would say is a negative or bad or the end. And it just pushes you and propels you to being who you were actually created to be. Because, and I always say this, I was not just born to be Mrs. So-and-so. Because before I was a Mrs., I was me. Yes. And so I'm always going to be me. So I haven't always been like this to everybody. So I've been, the man I was married to, lovely man. You know, I can't say anything, he's the father of my children, so I will not say anything, you know, against him. He has his own issues, as we all do. Everybody has their own issues, but one of the things that I did in order I felt to keep my marriage was to do what he wanted, and to kind of like fade into the background in order for him not to feel as if I was being threatening or I was challenging him in any way. So I just shrunk. So the stuff that I'm doing now, I would never have done if I was still married. And that's why I say it's really funny of how God changes things around, because I'm now me, and I'm free to be me, but I don't have a ring on my finger, but it doesn't matter. So anyway, after my divorce, I discovered myself. I found out who I was, started to do the radio. Like I said, like it says, I worked with Nigerian Web Radio, which was an online radio station which still exists, and I was a newsreader, and then I was given my own show. And the station is actually based in the States, so they wanted somebody in the UK to be their UK person, their bureau person, and that was me. I was working full-time. This was just like a hobby. So working full-time, looking after the kids. My son is 21 now, my daughter is 13, but this was when they were a bit younger. And so I started to do that, and then after that I moved on to my own show on Blog Talk Radio, where it was just about meeting people, and it was about, I always say that we always hear about the negative things about black people, about Africans, especially in the diaspora, and my thing was that there's lots of great things that's happening, but we don't get to hear about it. So that's what Thinking Aloud with Ayo, the radio show, was all about, promoting those good news stories about Nigeria, Africa, black people, especially outside of the continent. So I was always looking for stories, looking for people to interview, looking for people to come onto my show, and I came across this young gentleman who was very passionate about his charity that he'd set up. And it's called Domestic Violence UK. And I thought, okay, this is a Nigerian guy, very, very quiet, very, very unassuming. If he's in a room, he'll be the one that's at the back, sitting in a corner under a table. He doesn't want anybody to know who he is, but he's so passionate about what he does. So I invited him onto the show, and his passion just was infectious. He had experienced it in that one of his aunts had gone through domestic violence back in Nigeria. And so he had seen, so not necessarily firsthand in his own home, but he had seen the effects it had within the family. And so he said that it's always been on his mind that he wanted to do something similar, or do something to help people. And that's what he did when he moved to the UK. Now, before that time for me, I hadn't really had any sort of personal experience about domestic abuse or domestic violence, other than, as everybody does, you hear about it. Like somebody next door is beating their wife, they're always doing that, and then you just move on. Or everybody comes out, I'm talking about maybe back home in Nigeria, everybody comes out to see who is fighting now. Okay, it's them, and you go. So that was the kind of like, and I say that to say it was almost like the norm. Is he beating her? Don't beat. So people will stand from behind their gates. Don't beat her. Don't beat her while they're fighting, and then nobody does anything, and then they just turn around. So that was my own experience, really, of domestic abuse and domestic violence. But after I spoke to this young gentleman, and he, there was just something about him. I mean, he's married, he's got kids, and I just thought, you know what? I'm going to see what I can do to actually work with this charity. And so I started to work with them, they're a small charity based here in the UK, and I'll talk about them a bit later on, but I said, okay, I'll do what I can. So in doing that, it meant that I had to learn and look for information and understand what domestic abuse and domestic violence is. And that is why today I've decided to talk about why education is so important about domestic abuse. Now for me, I found that, like I said, it wasn't that I was on the receiving end, so I had a particular perspective or view of what it is. I didn't have that, so if somebody had come to me maybe 4 or 5 years ago and told me that they were going through issues at home, the response I would have given then is very different to what I was saying now because of what I know now. And the response I would have given them it would have been more of, why are you still there? Just go. Just leave him. Just, all this sort of putting the onus even back on the victim. You do something without actually addressing the fact that actually you're the victim, what he is doing is wrong. So anyway, so my view now is totally different, and that's through education. So today I'm going to talk about why education about domestic abuse is so key. Okay, that was just the introduction. So, education is key. Okay, so why do we need to, I don't have many slides, and if it's too small, I'll read it out anyway, but I just thought sometimes it's just easier to put stuff up on the screen. Why is education key? Knowledge helps you examine patterns in your own life to identify potential risk factors for abuse. So the reasons why it is good to educate yourself about domestic abuse. So not just for you, but for other people that you come in contact with. And bear with me, I do have some notes here, so I just make sure that I cover off everything that I wanted to say about each slide. Right, so what we do when we actually start educating ourselves about domestic abuse and domestic violence is that we debunk a lot of myths. We put stuff, we recognize what is true, what is made up, what is fantasy, what is reality, what is real by education. It's not about hearsay. They said this is what it is. You find out yourself, take the onus on yourself to find out what things are. I'm not talking just about domestic abuse, I'm talking about things generally. It's always good to find out for yourself. Knowledge is power. And the more that you know about a certain matter or a certain topic, the more empowered you are. The more you know about it, the more empowered you are. So that is why I say education is so key. So knowledge helps you examine patterns in your own life to identify potential risk factors of abuse. A lot of people here have said, or from the ladies that have spoken since I've been here, have spoken about how they grew up. So our sister here spoke about how she grew up in a lovely home, loving family. However, she was still in a position where she was being abused, which is a bit odd, because you think, how is that? Because you are told that if you're from an abusive home, childhood, then you're more likely to be in an abusive home when you grow up. Or if you're in a loving home when you were younger, you will always be in a loving home. But just from education, even the education we've had here, we realize that is not always the case. It is not always the case. So that's why I say it is so important to educate ourselves about it kind of like highlights what is going on with us in our own lives, so we can actually make proper judgments about things. Okay, so also I've got here, by doing that, you can also find out about how abusers work and how victims are created. Going back to what our sister said here about, or even what she said about how their exes had been so controlling, so manipulative, very friendly, very engaging with everybody else, but they knew what was going on at home. Such that, like I said, if I had been asked about 4 or 5 years ago by somebody like Chi, who had come to me and said, I'm being abused, I'd be like, but do you see the guy now? He's all right. Maybe it's you. Do you see what I mean? Because you already have a stereotype of what a abuser looks like. And the other thing also you learn is that abuse doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and the guy he just starts abusing you. Abusers, and this works for both male and female abusers, the perpetrators, they're very manipulative. They're very subtle. They know what they're doing. They don't just come full force. Bit by bit, they build, they tear you down step by step by step. They don't just bring you down like that. Chip away, chip away, chip away, until at the end of it, you are left of it being a shell of yourself. So this is what education does. It tells you and it shows you things that you need to look out for in your own relationship. And also, I mean, I'm going to get to this a bit later on, but the reason why I feel it's very important, education is very important, especially for us that have children, grandchildren, is to see so that they know what they need to look out for. And that even though this is how you grew up, this is what this is normal for you, maybe where you grew up now, but you need to be able to recognize what is not normal, because sometimes we say it's normal in our own household. What is normal in that household might be different, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what's normal in that household is correct. So the fact that something is different, we all know that we all have differences, but you've also got to recognize what is damaging. So it might be different, but is it damaging? Because it's all right for I mean, one of the things I always say to my daughter, she's at that age now, 13, where she thinks, I want to go out with my friends, I want to do this. And if I say no, she says, yeah, but Lucy's mum says it's okay. And I'll say, Lucy has her own parents. So in Lucy's house, it's fine. But in this house, this is what we do. So whatever goes, and I'm not saying that what Lucy's parents says is right or wrong, but that is their responsibility to look after Lucy. My responsibility is to look after you. So it doesn't mean that Lucy is wrong, but you've got to be able to distinguish between good and, well, I don't want to say good and bad, but differences and which ones are enhancing, which ones are damaging. That is what education does. Okay. I don't need to move over, so I'm going to bring it. I'm really quick. Okay, so we need to educate. Another reason why education is key, we need to educate young people to help them create healthy relationships from the start. Now, I touched on this briefly, but I said my son is 21, so I don't know if it's different. I think it's different between boys and girls. Boys, you're kind of like expecting them to date. Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? I mean, he's 21. And even to be honest, from the age of 18, I was asking him, so what's happening? Who is she? What? And all that sort of stuff. But for my daughter, I don't think I'll be that quick to ask, so are you dating? Because it's just, I think relationships are just different with our children. But I think it's still so important we teach them the different types of relationships that they can come into, especially for our young teenagers or even older teenagers, that look, this is not right. You know, I mean, as all of us were teenagers at one point, some of us many years ago, but still, we were all teenagers, and we can all still remember what it's like to be in love, you know, to meet the person of my dreams. This is the person I'm going to have all those sort of feelings, you know. And if you, and I'm talking obviously, I can only talk from a woman's point of view, from a young girl, if you like somebody, really like them, and this boy kind of like indicates that he likes you, but he's asking you to do certain stuff because you like him, you might just do it. You might just, because I don't want him not to like me. So it's about teaching kids, to the young ones, I mean, I don't mean, obviously it's got to be age appropriate, but you've got to teach them what is acceptable and what isn't. How to be confident in yourself, and still make compromise when necessary, but do not compromise who you are. So one of the things I say to my daughter, she's 13, going on 17. So even when she was like 11, 12, you know, she's very drama queenish, and oh, nobody likes me, and all of that. And I'll say to her that, look, I understand that you want to be liked amongst your friends, especially when she first moved to year 7, which is the senior school. You want to be liked amongst all these new people. You want people to, you know, warm towards you. And that's fine. But don't change yourself in order to fit in. Because if you do, if they don't like you, you'll have to change again. So you'll change so many times. But at the end of it, you won't know who you are. And you'll be like schizophrenic, because you'll be like, when I'm with this group of friends, I'm this person. When I'm with that group of friends, I'm another person. So it's the same thing with relationships. It's okay to understand about give and take, about compromise, because as they're growing up, this is the real world. That's what's going to happen. But if it strips you, or makes you feel uncomfortable, or diminishes you, undermines you, it is not right for you as an individual. And even from the male point of view, because even though we know that perpetrators can be male or female, but we're going to focus more today. Sorry, guys, but we're going to focus more today about the male perpetrators. You know, the guys themselves might not even necessarily know that what they're doing is manipulative. They might not know. They might just think, because of the environment they've grown up in, that if you want a girl to like you, this is what you do. I've got to be a man. Do you see what I mean? So we need to teach our boys, most especially as well, about respecting themselves, respecting the people that they're with, respecting the other girls, you know, they come in contact with. One of the things I just say to my son is, if you see a girl doing something that you will not like your sister doing, then, or if you see, like, then it was like videos. If you see a girl dancing in a particular way on the video, and she turned around and it was your sister, if it will make you feel uncomfortable, then maybe you shouldn't be watching it. Maybe, because if it makes you feel so uncomfortable that you've got somebody who is half naked and she's shaking her bum, would you want your sister to be doing that? And I know it's a bit over the top, but I'm trying to get him to think that that is someone's daughter, someone's sister. She is not an object. She's not just to be sexualized. So it's about teaching the kids to respect others, to respect the opposite sex, to respect themselves. And that is why education about themselves, about the others, is so key. Because once you are more aware as a young person, or even as an adult, of who you are, you're talking about worth and stuff, who you are, who other people are as well, and how valuable other people are. They're not for you to be, they're not playthings for you to play with. They are people with emotions, and so it's so important to teach them that. Okay, moving on. Right, through education we can learn the difference between what may seem normal to us and what is safe and healthy. I think I've touched on that already, about how important it is to keep with that. By educating ourselves, we educate others. Now for this one was really key for me, because like I said, I haven't, through the work that I'm doing with Domestic Violence UK, the charity, I come across a lot more people who are actually in abusive relationships, both men and women, actually more men than women, because men, especially within the African community, don't talk about stuff. They don't talk about it because you just don't. I mean, it's getting better now for even women, just about getting better for women to be able to talk about it. We have forums like this, we have conferences like this where we can talk about it. But previously, it was taboo. You didn't talk, you just got on with it. You just, is he feeding, or like, I think it was you again who was saying, is he giving you a house, or you were saying, is he buying you a car? Is he putting, hey, so if he's beating you, hey, you too, keep quiet, don't be abusing him. You know, that was how it used to be. So, but at least now we're talking more about it. But still, for men, it's still difficult, and we still know that it goes on, but there's not a lot of, forums or opportunities for them to talk about it because it's still a taboo thing. But I think the work I'm doing with the Domestic Violence UK, I'm realizing that it is so important to spread the word that domestic abuse and violence is not to be tolerated. It is not to be excused. It has to be faced head on. It has to be dealt with. It has to be called what it is. What it's not culture. It is not, it's color. It's not. It is wrong. It's a crime. In most countries, it's criminal offense. So the more we educate ourselves, we're able to educate other people about it as well. And we find that we have a voice, because we're not just talking out of hot air. We're not just talking about what we've heard. We talk about what we know from what we've been educated about. So that's why I think it's so important as well to make sure that you spread the word about what you know, about what is wrong. Okay. How am I doing for time? Okay. Knowledgeable communities provide more useful resources. Now, I think a lot has been spoken here about people who have come into the country and felt that they didn't have a voice, did not know what to do, because they were told by their abusive spouse that you can't leave me, where are you going to go? But the more we know about domestic abuse, then the more as a community, I'm talking about African communities, somebody mentioned earlier on about us doing more as a community, working together. So when we know what the problems are, then we know what we need to put in place to address those problems. So the more we educate ourselves, the more we can get together and say, right, okay, so we now know that most people, if people who are in abusive relationships find that it's very difficult for them to leave because they have nowhere else to go, okay, so we need to think about how we can set up refuges, how we can set up safe houses. We need to think about things like that, and that comes from education. Because the more we know, then the more we know about what we need to do to help ourselves. We know about our culture. We know about how our generation thinks, our parents' generation thinks. So because we know about that, we can then use that information to still do things for within our community, such that, because it's difficult sometimes when you're talking to somebody who is not from the same place as you, when you start telling them about the problems you have, and they're like, oh yeah, but why don't you just do that? And you think, you don't understand, we can't, I can't just do that because it's not acceptable. Do you see what I mean? But if we as a community know more about what the problem is, we are more likely to be able to put things together, rally around, and put things in place that can solutions to help our own communities. Okay. So resources. Now, I know a lot of people have spoken about resources. I'm sure people have spoken about different charities and websites and that sort of thing. But because I work with Domestic Violence UK, I'm going to focus on that. But this is the thing. Now, the time that we're living in, internet age, there's a whole heap of information available online. A whole heap of information. And what I have found also is that sometimes people are not in a position where victims are not in a position where they can leave. They don't have the confidence yet. They're not quite ready to leave. But the good thing about the internet and that sort of thing is that they can acquire information. They can build up knowledge so that when they are ready to leave, they know where they need to go. They can just, so somebody might think, oh, where can I don't have any money. How else am I going to do it? So you can go online and you can actually find that there are things that you can do. There's some places where you do not need money. There are actual lawyers who will actually do things pro bono for you just to get you going. There are refuges that are there that will take you and your children. So you might not necessarily have to go to social services or whatever, but all that information is online. So Domestic Violence UK, this is the website for the charity that I work for, and they do a whole load of things. One of the things that they do is they run campaigns. Love Doesn't Hurt is a campaign that they run in lots of different ways. I mean, I've got the wristbands here, and they just have T-shirts, and the thing I love about the website, this is just an image of the website, is it's quite ingenious. I don't know whether other websites have this as well, but as you're looking at it, there's actually a button on this side. You can't see it here, but some people are looking for information, but they're still living at home with an abusive spouse. So you can just press the button, and so if you hear somebody coming, you can just press the button, and it will disappear. So do you see what I mean? Because you have some,
Very clever.
some men, women, abusers. You know, they are always over your shoulder. They're always checking out what you do, but you can look on it, and then you press the button, and it will just disappear. So the person will not know what so you're safe. The other thing that they do is they provide telephone counselling, so you can actually call up, and it's free of charge to the caller. You can call up a number, and they'll actually give you counselling over the phone, and it's free. So the money that the charity raises, it goes for things like this, so like free telephone counselling, and also they support refugees as well. So you can imagine somebody saying, okay, this is it today, I'm leaving with my kids, this is it, and they just leave. The guy has gone out for 5 minutes to go and do whatever, and they run. They can run, and they leave with nothing. So what the refugees do is that they'll provide, so we have, the charity does like packs. So you have things like toothpaste. They take donations from people, toothpaste, washcloths, shower gel, toys for the kids, and put them in boxes and send them to the refugees, so that, and like underwear, sanitary stuff, you know, things that you don't even think of, because if you want it, you go and get it. But if somebody leaves with nothing, they have nothing, this is what the charity does as well. So they have things like that. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and I really would like you guys to actually have a look at the website when you can, and just see what they do. So they have like a monthly magazine, and they have blog posts. But here, I know this was been touched on already about the different types of abuse that exist. So the website has a lot of information about different types of abuse, and also where you can go to get help. I've learned a lot from this website without leaving my house. I can just sit here and learn about, you know, what abuse looks like, what perpetrators look like, how to help somebody who has just left, what to say, what not to say. The website is brilliant, so please have a look at it. And that's it. Thank you.